Welcome, everybody. Compass and Anchor Fitness and Performance Podcast. What are we at, number 4?
This is 4.
Wow, look at us.
Yeah, this is a lot
And
of...
I will, just do a friendly warning to everybody that Derek has a lot of energy this morning.
There's a lot going on.
So
There's a lot going on right
I
now.
might just let him run with the entire show today. You never know. You never know what each week is going to bring. I think he has the energy for both of us right now.
Picking up the slack.
Yeah, he has a large coffee in front of him. Who knows? So, today's topic is one that comes up a lot. I actually have I've succumbed to this idea before. No longer believing it, but I think there are a lot of people out there who think that working out harder is better, working out longer is more effective, and sweating during a workout is like a must do or else you didn't work hard enough. So those are 3 kind of prongs to what I wanted to bring to your attention is what's going on in the world, what people are talking about, and see what you thought about it.
Yeah. Well, it's no secret I'm pretty opinionated about a lot of different things. I suppose that's the whole purpose behind having a podcast. I don't know if ours is still... All right, turns out is still running, all right? But we're back now. So where were we? Yeah.
You're very opinionated, is what you were saying.
I'm a little opinionated, and I'm also not technologically very strong.
Nope, I just sat here watching you try to figure that out. Apparently we had 2 tabs running, and one of them was actually recording, and one of them was something else.
I feel like you being the host, you should be the person to have to figure that out.
Your hand went straight to the mouse right before I could even try to.
So, let's get back on track here, I guess. We're talking about the concept of working out very hard and sweating and all these things. So I guess what I would start with is talking about what that meant to you. Depending on person to person. So I'll come right out with if you have to sweat for it to be a hard workout, there's a good chance you have no idea what's going on. There's a good chance you don't know what you're talking about. Because some people just don't sweat very much and some people just sweat profusely. And to judge your experience based on a sensation like that doesn't really hold any water. No pun intended.
I think you made up that term anyways.
The concept of working out longer is kind of relative, right? It's dependent on the person. If how intensely is that person working? How hard are they pushing themselves? What's their overall capacity to work? So there's a lot of you can change your thoughts on that given from person to person, right? So I suppose I would ask who are we talking about? If we're talking about for the average person,
yeah,
then it might make the most sense to determine what this person's work capacity is first, right? If you have never strength trained before and you also have a pretty poor diet overall, there's a really good chance that your overall capacity to work is going to be really low. Mm-hmm. And truthfully, you might want to work out longer, believe it or not, because there's a really good chance you're going to need more time to rest. Hmm. So there's a lot of factors that have to be considered when you talk about how much time, how long are you working out for? I guess it depends on what you're doing. If you're a power lifter, you're probably working out for a long time because you need a lot of time to rest. Because the efficiencies, right, of your work are in short spurts.
Right. And
because of their degree of intensity, again, depending on what your workout split is or whatever the case is, depending on what you're doing, you could need more or less rest as a result of it. But it's also based on what type of program you're doing. This is, a really good example of why a person whom isn't familiar with exercise, it makes more sense for them to get a trainer, to work with somebody, to work with a coach, because there are a lot of variables to consider. And if you don't make decisions from the very beginning, or alternatively, if you just don't make decisions well, you're going to be spinning your wheels for a while.
True.
So this is like a really intense topic, truthfully.
Yeah, I mean, my head is kind of spinning with a lot of different questions and topics. I mean, something that came to mind is like the many different definitions of a workout then.
Sure.
It depending on, but for the average person, what does a workout mean? For a lot of people, it's, am I sore? Did I sweat? Sometimes you're not going to sweat. Sometimes the average person in a strength session, it's not necessarily going to profusely sweat.
No.
And they probably will question the effectiveness of their workout and feel like they have to do cardio to end it and get a good sweat on.
Sure. There's total merit for conditioning, with any program. You don't want to stick to one specific thing and only do that thing ever, right? That doesn't really make a lot of sense. Unless you are a sport-specific athlete. If you're an Olympic weightlifter, it makes the most sense for you to practice Olympic weightlifting. If you're a powerlifter, it makes the most sense for you to practice powerlifting pretty consistently. But then, there's so many layers to this, because, even within the practice of that specific sport or activity, there's still multiple training styles within that medium.
Right.
In order for you to see results consistently without plateauing, without, getting injured, without, overworking, one thing and underworking another. There's always change in order to be better, and to be different. I think that this conversation is something that the audience would likely want to know, what's the answer? What's the black and white answer? And there isn't one,
right?
Because this isn't the right question. If you start with the question, how long should I be working out? I'm probably going to answer that question with another question,
right?
Just from a training perspective, I don't know, what's your goal? What do you want? I can give you a generic umbrella style answer, and it won't be totally wrong,
right?
But it won't be totally right. And are we trying to be efficient here? Are we trying to solve problems for you, or are we just trying to get blanket generic information? Because you can go on Google for that,
right?
It's about the interpretation of that information. That's what's really, really important. So I would say, let's start with your goal, and we'll combine that with, where are you right now? Right? So there's a lot of factors, and I think it's probably worth the time to kind of discuss what those factors are, right? So it's where are you? What do you want? So that's your goal, all right? How much time do you have to work out?
Right.
How much time does that leave you to recover? Okay? And then I would also say, how long are you going to be pursuing this? Is this your life? Is this a lifestyle thing? Because if it is, then great. That's good. But in training, personal training specifically, we look at things from a perspective of 3, 6, and 12-month periods. Because when you program for a person, you need to know, at the end of this period of time, what is going to be, in their eyes, what is success going to look like? So when you're training by yourself, it's no different. Just because you don't necessarily know all of these things, it doesn't make the science any less accurate, right? So speaking about micro, meso, and macro cycles is the terminology that's used to discuss programming. And when you are discussing programming in that way, you're talking about frames of time that you give a person to pursue specific aspects of a goal and to achieve quote unquote growth, change, forward progress. over that period of time. And so each week, each month, each year should compound and affect, each other. So it should be the programming should be like linear, but your progress won't be. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah. I think it's, I think the bigger message is that it's so dependent on you.
I could never give you a flat answer.
There's no generic answer.
Yeah, I could never feel good about giving you a flat answer. I've worked with a couple of strength coaches, in the time that I've worked in the fitness industry, and there are certain things that I really love about like true blue, like blue collar strength coaches, like athlete coaches, and one of them is, some of the language, some of like the colloquial terms, like things people say, like it sticks around for everybody, and I had this guy, and he used to say all the time, people would ask him a question, he goes, depends. You just shrug your shoulders. Depends.
It's such a frustrating answer.
It's the most frustrating answer in the entire world, but it is the most accurate answer.
Yeah.
For pretty much everything in the fitness industry, because it's so dependent on you as the person, pursuing whatever it is you're pursuing.
So to me, it sounds like a lot of these things that we mentioned at the beginning are kind of a psychological way of thinking of, like, if you feel that you need to sweat to quote unquote have an effective workout, that's relative to you, right?
Sure.
And that's
until it isn't.
Well, that's something psychologically that somebody feels more comfortable with, and then I know people who, unless they're sore after their workout, don't feel that they have had an effective workout.
Sure. I'll say something really controversial here, so I'm really sorry to everybody, but here we are. If you're going to listen to this, you're going to hear me say weird stuff sometimes. Feelings aren't facts, and that's okay. You can feel any kind of way that you want, as long as you know that, like, that's just a feeling, and it doesn't make it accurate.
Right.
It's just how you feel is not a factor in the correctness of something. And if you're the type of person who needs to sweat in order to feel like you got a good workout, then fine, more power to you. Like, if you're not asking for my help, then, like, who am I to step in and tell you what to do? I wouldn't do that. And I know a lot of, like, serious professionals will just let you do whatever you're going to do as long as it's not completely negligent and dangerous.
Right.
However, like, the type of activity that is going to, like, increase your inner core temperature so consistently that you're just profusely sweating. And again, I'm going to take this to, like, the furthest length because otherwise it's not going to make sense. For you to do that, you're going to have to be constantly moving. Mm-hmm. So the likelihood that you're going to be performing movements that are, like, really, really intense. And what I mean is, like, heavy, complex movement. Complex being like a squat, which is, like, not that complex, but, like, something that requires technique and is also heavy. There's a very low likelihood that you're going to be able to do that consistently, right? In a circuit or whatever the case is, so call it like metabolic efficiency training or something like that. It's not efficient for long-term strength training, right? It's not specific to that. And so if you just want to do that, like pedal to the metal, go for it, that's cool. But, like, your risk of injury is very high over, like, a long term, okay? You're also not going to reach your strength potential.
Right.
And as a result, you're still doing strength training, right? To some degree, if you're doing, like, circuits or things like that, it's still, like, a form of strength training. It's just not the most efficient strength training.
Right.
So what ends up happening is you're kind of misusing certain movements a lot of the time. And you see this in, I'm not going to say in CrossFit because that's not the case, but you see this in poorly performed CrossFit, in poorly performed boot camp classes, in poorly performed circuit training, all of that, like, throwing your body around, kind of like erratic behavior. You see that because people want the sensation of, I got a good workout.
Right.
What ends up happening is you breed acute injuries as well as chronic ones because you never actually focus on what it is that you're doing. You never actually focus in on weak points or breaks in your kinetic chain that would otherwise, like, influence a long-term weakness. So say, for example, like, all you ever did was just strengthen your quads and you never strengthen your hamstrings. Well, there's a strength balance. There's a ratio that is necessary in order to like maintain knee stability. And if you like constantly just keep overworking those quads, eventually there's going to be a knee injury.
Right. Eventually
it's going to happen. And I wouldn't even call it acute at that point. I would say like this was predetermined.
Right.
This was silly.
Yeah.
So don't get me wrong. You can do whatever you want, but at the end of the day, there's like a reason behind programming, because it's about efficiency. It's not about how you feel. It's about like, why are you doing it? If you're doing it just to like feel good, get on an elliptical. Like, don't put yourself at risk that way,
Right.
Like do something simple. And that's the concept behind like a blood specific warm up. You're just trying to do something as simple as possible to increase your inner core temperature. Like, that's facts. Like, that's a real concept in strength training.
Right.
in real programming. There's movement-based warm-ups, and then there's just, like, metabolic-based warm-ups. And the metabolic ones are supposed to make you tired and make you hot, and you want them to be as simple as possible because the risk of injury is super low.
Right.
So that's, like, for that specifically, it's like, do whatever you want, but at the end of the day, like, there's a better way to do everything. Why are you doing it? If you're doing it for, because you like to sweat, well, then I'd say, like, do something more simple and, like, I don't know, talk to somebody about that.
So if it is goal dependent, then how would you, like, as a trainer, structure a session for somebody who was more strength based versus weight loss based?
Trick question, really. I mean, they're really similar. It comes down to rest periods being a little bit different. But in my opinion, fat loss training or weight loss training or whatever you want to call it is really similar to strength training, or strength and conditioning.
Yeah.
It's just you want to keep them moving a little bit more. You want to maximize their efficiency, but you also like. It's hard because it depends, right? All right, so what I would say is
it depends.
I'm that annoying person. What I would say is you would start with a like a blood-based, like, simple warm-up, and just to get the body warm and just get the body moving. You want them to sweat a little bit. You want their body, like their inner core temperature, to be warmer. Then I would say, okay, based on whatever we're doing today, we're going to do movement-specific warm-up or, like, movement preparation, okay? What this does is it provides you with, like the reason to start moving well. Maybe it's like some ankle mobility, maybe it's some foam rolling stuff, maybe it's like if you're doing squats, maybe we just do some suboptimal squatting, just so that way you start to prime that, like the nervous system.
Right.
All right. So then I would say for a fat loss person, me personally, what I would do is have them do probably the exact same thing as the strength training person, except for the like fat loss person, I would just keep them their heart rate a little bit higher. So point being, in between sets, maybe they're doing something like marching in place or box step-ups or jump rope or something like that. Something that is simple but keeps them moving, so that way they're continuing to burn calories, but it's not the prime thing. It's not like so important, and it's not going to draw so much energy out of them that it's going to, like, oh my God, it's going to take away from everything else. Because what you want is you want the strength training. You want to stimulate muscles, because the afterburn, quote unquote, is like 36 hours to 72 hours. It's like a huge window of metabolic efficiency. You increase your metabolic output pretty substantially over the course of several hours, like a few days. And that's why strength training is so superior in fat loss than just straight up, like, quote unquote cardio, like just doing something that's aerobic.
Right.
Because once you stop doing the aerobic activity, it's over.
Right.
Your heart rate goes back to normal, and then you're back to normal.
Right.
You didn't stress anything to the point where it needs to recover. The efficiency is in all of the effort that your body has to put in order to recover from all the strain, all the stress you placed on it. It has to physically repair itself, and that requires energy.
Right.
And that's really important. If you get your body into a point where you're constantly taking more calories in order to repair itself, that becomes a very, very efficient supply chain. You know, you bring calories in, you're constantly stressing yourself, you're constantly working hard, you're constantly stimulating muscle, so you're utilizing energy for this stress, you're utilizing energy for this repair, and then you're just rinse and repeat. And it's very difficult. It's very difficult to stay overweight when you're doing that. You know, with any level of nutritional guidance, you know, you can lose a tremendous amount of fat doing that. And it doesn't have to be crazy, jumping around, jumping off stuff, sprinting around. Like, sprints are great, don't get me wrong, I love sprints. But, like, not everybody loves sprints. And, like, you don't have to do that.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of really efficient ways to lose fat, and it doesn't involve you like sweating your face off and like jumping off buildings.
Sweet. If you're jumping off buildings, please be careful.
Don't do that.
Don't do that at all. Okay. I mean, I think that this is pretty like debunking basically those three quote unquote myths right there. I think it's again, it's just relative to who you are, what you prefer in a workout. I just thought that those three things were something that I hear often of, like, well, I don't know if I got a good workout, I didn't even sweat, or like, you know, my sessions with you were 30 minutes. I wasn't used to working out for quote unquote that short amount of time, but being that efficient during a workout. So, you know, I wanted to bring those up. I don't know if you have anything else that you want to mention about this kind of topic.
Yeah, probably like two things quickly, and you know, just to reiterate on that, like, whatever you want to do is going to inherently have a predetermined amount of time necessary to accomplish it. You know, if you have a 400-pound, you know, back squat and you're 150 pounds, that's a big back squat. That's a huge back squat. It's probably going to take you a while to get your body prepared to do that. So just like, not even the actual workout, right? If you wanted to like get up to 85% of that 400 pounds, it's probably going to take you a little bit to scale up. We're not even talking about the actual workout yet. We're talking about just getting ready to do that.
Right.
Just one time. Okay? So that's really important. So when thinking about it from that frame, certain things just take longer than other things.
Right.
And that's okay.
Right.
It doesn't mean you have to be like killing yourself the entire time. You don't have to be like just smashing the entire, you know, hour and a half or however long, or hour or whatever, if that's what you want to do. Alternatively, if you're like, hey, I need to do some like shoulder rehab work and I need to, you know, really focus on, you know, my lats and like very, very specific stuff. Maybe that only takes 30 minutes.
Right.
Because everything else is seemingly simple comparatively. Or maybe you're like, I need to lose 100 pounds. And it makes the most sense for me to work out 4 days a week for an hour.
Right.
And I would say you're absolutely correct. Like, more is going to be great.
Right.
Just make sure that you equally, or honestly more, make time for your recovery.
Right.
You have to do all the other things as well. It doesn't end after that hour in the gym. So I think that's really, really important. It's, you need to decide what it is that you want to do, because that goal will likely have a semi-predetermined amount of time per workout, but also a frequency per week. And then also think about from like weight loss, right? If we were to stick with really healthy weight loss and you wanted to lose 52 pounds, guess what? It's going to take 52 weeks. You know, a pound a week is considered healthy. We know that. That's like pretty obvious. But people, for whatever reason, don't want to think about the math. You know, we're talking about a year, and that's okay. But, you know, break it up. But, like, commit to the simple things first. What do you want? How are we going to get there? It probably has a predetermined amount of time. So just do that. It's very simple. And then the other one specifically is, if you are a person who is, like, questioning the shit out of your trainer, likely your trainer didn't do a really good job educating you on like what it is that you need, what it is you're doing, and why you're doing it.
Right.
If you're like, I feel like I didn't get a good workout, and they just like don't address that at all, well then shame on them, because you're the person who's paying for it.
Right.
This is a service.
Right.
And like to be completely blunt, they work for you. Mm-hmm. If you're gonna do that, me personally, I would expect some conversation. I would expect some education. I would want to know what we're doing, why we're doing it, you know, why my recommendation is whatever it is, and how I see things going into the future. Because if there isn't a game plan, or you don't know about it, two things. Either one, you haven't asked, or two, there isn't one.
Right.
That's not good.
Right.
So, you know, I'm sorry. I feel like every week I come in here and I just shit on personal trainers, but I am a personal trainer and I like personal trainers and I really support personal training.
You're just talking about quality personal trainers.
Well, thank you. I really think that there is a standard of care that needs to be like put forward all the time. There's no like stepping off the gas. There's none of that. It should be just like going to see your doctor. It should be like, there's a way we do things, and there is a standard of care, and there's a procedure that which you receive information. You work with your trainer, with your person,
yeah.
And then what do you do after that? Like there are things that are needed, because you know, if I were to sit here and be like, yeah, it's just about the workout, you know, you come in, you work out, like you would never get anything out of it.
Right.
You know, it would be too expensive to ever get anything out of it. There has to be more. So that's kind of my long-winded thought process on that. And, you know, if it's frustrating, it's only because you haven't chosen a definitive goal. Mm-hmm. And truthfully, you're rushing. You're trying to race the clock. I only have so much time to do so many goals. I have to start now and do all of them. Well, that doesn't make any sense. That's, you know, really inefficient. You should choose something, get better at it, and then move on to the next thing, and, you know, support, you know, the things you got with good behavior.
Truth.
Yeah.
You heard it here first. So, all in all, I think, you know, working out harder, stronger, faster, longer, sweating, all those things relative to what you want to do, relative to what your goals are. So really just kind of tune into what you are really after, and then what the most efficient way is to achieve that goal. So let us know in the comments what your goals are, what your questions are. Reach out to Derek, see what he would suggest for certain things. You know, talk about it. And that's really how you start to learn what the most efficient and effective way is for you. And with that said, episode 4 is now complete. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We'd love to hear how this one went for you.
Thanks, guys. I'm Derek. This is Laura. We're signing off.